Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
It really starts for us as a staff in our staff meetings. I mean, we meet very briefly, 15 minutes, maybe a day, as a complete staff, and we're going to discuss every detail of that practice to make sure our staff, our support staff, is on the same page.
In this episode, Tim Shields, co-offensive coordinator at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, discusses practice excellence. He emphasizes creating a disciplined and engaged practice environment, focusing on attention to detail and continuous improvement. Coach Shields highlights adaptability throughout the season, player-led initiatives like what he calls the lab, and the importance of integrating key principles of your offense or defense into your daily routines. Be sure to stay tuned for our Winning Edge takeaway following the episode. As we get into the later part of the season here, at least for some teams around the country, we want to focus on ideas that are going to keep your team moving forward. And today we're going to discuss being great in practice. And joining me to give us some ideas, share some thoughts on this, is the co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, Tim Shields. Tim, great to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. Appreciate you having me. It's a great podcast. Probably one of 2 or 3 I do, and an awesome resource for me.
Yeah, thank you. Great to hear that. We're going to dive right into it, Tim. And one of the things you said to me before we got going is one of your objectives at Whitewater is you guys want to be the best practice team in the country. So in doing that, it means that you guys on your side as coaches got to remain great teachers throughout the year. It doesn't stop at the install. It keeps going. And obviously you're constantly looking for ways on how do we make this better when we hit the practice field this week. So philosophically, what are some of the things you're thinking about as a coach in order to be able to do that, to be the best practice team in the country?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's something we're trying to tackle day in and day out, week in and week out. I think it starts with our head coach, Jace Rendell. He does such a phenomenal job of, one, keeping our guys focused from week to week. We're fortunate to play in some big games at our institution, and I think it can get to you if you let it. But one way we do keep our guys focused is just that effort in practice, that attention to detail in practice. We make practice very competitive. We make practice something that makes the games easier. And it starts and finishes really with our head coach. And I think about some of the things we do constantly. We're constantly looking to make ourselves a better practice team. We set out each fall, I think, with 2 clear-cut goals as a staff. We want to be the best teachers we can possibly be and do whatever it takes to create and foster the best practicing team in the country. I think, as I mentioned, the detail, it comes from our head coach, and it really starts for us as a staff in our staff meetings. I mean, we meet very briefly, 15 minutes, maybe a day, as a complete staff, and we're going to discuss every detail of that practice to make sure our support staff is on the same page. We talk about ball placement. We talk about camera angles, transitions. If we're getting multiple groups from both sides of the ball together, we're going to talk about transitions. We're going to talk about reps. We're going to talk about who's going to be running the drill, who's in charge of the whistle. Those are the details I think that, be quite frank, staffs before that I've been on, they weren't talking about that. Those are the little things from just the semantics, just the logistics standpoint that can really, I think, benefit staff, especially if I'm an academic advisor for 6 hours a day. We have a DB coach, our defensive coordinator, Marcus McGlennon. He's in admissions for 4 hours a day. So we don't have everybody, like I imagine most small schools, we don't have every coach in the building for the entire day. So we use that 15 minutes. Usually it's in the morning, but pretty early. We use that 15 minutes to get everybody on the same page. And from there, I think we look for opportunities, whether it's creating depth, whether it's creating competition. Those are the other, variables that we really try to attack as well.
I think you bring up some important things there. Those little details that may seem trivial, from little things like making sure the field's clear of equipment that was brought out there for a drill, making sure that it's set up. Again, who's on the whistle? I mean, all those kinds of things go into making a practice that's going to be crisp, that's going to be for the players well organized, so they're keeping their focus and that it is a great practice. Now, when you look at going through that process as coaches, as you get into the later part of the year, are there any adjustments? Are you guys looking for opportunity to, I guess, maybe switch things up a little bit in the way you do things? How does that look like for you as you continue through the season?
Yeah, ultimately, I think you're constantly throughout the year trying to always do it better. You're trying to be more efficient with your time, your staff's time, your players' time. You're trying to accomplish things like keeping your players healthy, but still getting them prepared for big games on Saturday or Friday or whatever day it is. And then ultimately, you got to create depth throughout the season. So we're always looking to create those opportunities in our practice. One thing I think we do a really good job here is we're constantly looking at other programs and asking other programs, what are they doing? How are they maintaining health? How are they building depth? How are they being more efficient with their time? One thing we do here, I think, is really start to trim practice down throughout the year. We make our transitions faster. We start to maybe do a few less reps here and there. I don't know, if you're in week 8, 9, 10, and you're running that day one install, you'd like to think that your guys could probably do that with a little bit less reps in practice, a little bit less pounding. Even as you get later into the year, you're constantly looking and leaning on some of those younger guys, those freshmen, those sophomores that maybe haven't had an opportunity to take that rep in a meaningful game, but you'd like to think you've prepared them with opportunities in practice. So being intentional with those situations where maybe it's a young guy scrimmage, we're going good on good for 5 to 10 minutes in practice to create a scenario where there is some urgency, there is some competition. Our young guys here do a great job. If they're not traveling, they're doing a great job on our scout team and preparing our offense or our defense for what they're going to get on Saturdays. But if you're doing yourself a favor, you're also getting those guys ready for their opportunities on Saturday. So we're very conscious of that. You ultimately want to get to the end of the year and hopefully the postseason with as healthy as a squad as you can find. And sometimes that means creating depth as well. And I think we do a really good job of that, of just being focused on creating opportunities throughout the year. We do have JV games here, right? But even those are kind of few and far between. So as we get later into the season with injuries and whatnot, we're always looking to present our guys with opportunities to compete and make it as real as a scenario as possible.
Yeah, I love going out and watching practices, seeing how different teams do things, and I think it's a great way to pick things up. Obviously, you can't do that. You guys, especially playing late in the year, I mean, you're not able to go out and watch many practices. Maybe in the spring. I think spring ball is a great time to be able to see some of those things too. But I think you find interesting ways of doing things. As an example, the other day I was watching on the NFL Network, some reruns of Hard Knocks with the Detroit Lions, and they had one practice where Dan Campbell was the only guy out on the field, and his job was just to blow the whistle. He told him, this is going to be a player-run practice. And when I looked at it and watched the leadership of those veteran players taking over the practice, actually setting up drills, going through thinking what they wanted to do that day for individual, I thought, you know what, there's something there that's really smart. Now, maybe that's better for camp. Maybe that's better for spring ball. I don't know. But even you're talking about getting the younger players ready. I mean, to tell the older guys, hey, this next 15 minutes of practice, you guys are running it. You think about that idea of how well you know something is really if you can teach it, if you could teach it as well as anybody. And I thought that was a pretty neat idea. He led his coaches on that particular day. It must have been training camp and they were getting ready for something, but he's got all the coaches inside working on a game plan and all. It was a player one run practice. I never seen that, especially at that level, but I thought those kind of ideas, you don't have to do it for a whole practice, but implemented here and there can be very useful.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny you say that. We just had an O-line, D-line high school youth camp here, and maybe more rewarding things is the camp director of that camp and not having to coach it is being able to kind of sit back and watch some of our players coaching high school and 7th and 8th graders doing the drills we do, using the coaching points we're using. It gives you obviously a sense of pride that whatever you're giving to them is getting through and getting through into a point that it's translating not only on their game for Saturday or throughout practice, throughout spring ball or what have you, but also to the point where they can coach it. And I love what you said because we really pride our upperclassmen here, our leaders. And we look at our leaders as anyone that wants to be a leader. And we push our guys to really challenge, support each other, love each other. And one thing they do, I think, a great job here is getting our guys to coach each other. We do something at the end of each practice now for 2 years. We call it the lab. It's just really a 10-minute session after practice where our group of offensive linemen go to our spot on the field, and then we kind of hyper-focus on a low-impact drill, whether it's just working posture in pass pro. Maybe it's working our hand carriage in pass pro. Maybe it's working our eyes on something. We take 10 minutes at the end of every practice to do this. And I've sort of come to the point now that I've really resided and taken a step back during this lab period. And I let our guys really coach each other. And what I've found over that time is, one, we've developed some great leaders in the room. We've developed some great teachers in the room. But also what I found is it's really created a culture of guys that, one, love our game, two, are constantly working to get better because they're not doing the drill any longer because Coach Shields, and this is the drill that we're doing in Indy period number 3, these guys wanting to get better on their craft. And it's their buddy, the guy that they're lining up against, the guy that they're getting dressed with in the locker room, that they're running out to the field with on Saturdays. It's their buddy that's helping them get better. And it's really done, I think, a number for us as far as, like I said, just a camaraderie that I really feel is like maybe unmatched in any position room I've ever been in. And then I've seen it translate to, like I said, our O-line, D-line camp, or 9 of our O-linemen just doing a phenomenal job giving back to the kids in our region.
Yeah, I love that. I love the focus you can get in some of those periods. I know something I did as an offensive line coach at college level was usually as the year went on, we would always steal as many periods as we can. It was a special teams period, unless it was shield punt, maybe you'd lose some guys, or field goal extra point. Offensive line had time to work, and I started implementing, we called it work on your own period. And what we told the guys, I mean, I set up the parameters for them, is this is a period for you to work on a skill or a technique you feel like you need the most work on. It is 100% tailored to you. Find a partner who you can work with and split the period with him. You get whatever gear you need, whatever you need to do the drills. And I want you working though. And it's not a million reps, but I want you getting good quality reps. I want you guys coaching each other up. And those were some very productive periods for our guys. And I would see 3, 4, 5 different things being worked. Could be anything from a guy working to, drop the anchor on pass pro. And I know one of the things we taught was, I think I got it from Scott Peters, with physio ball, of that creating a little momentum into the guy where he's getting bull rushed and there's not a big hit there. When you use the physio ball though, it's really knocking that player back and he's got to drop the anchor, get his feet in the ground and reset and get back after it. Or somebody working with the med ball, somebody working on run blocking and combos. Maybe it's a group of 4 guys working together. But when I put that on them, you saw something different happen in them, rather than sometimes guys, I feel like, try to survive drills that geez, I really got to think, what is it I'm working on today? How do I want to be efficient? How do I want to get my reps in? And it became very productive, something they wanted every week. After the first couple times, what do you guys think? We love that part. We love that drill.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think there's just a level, as kind of what you're hinting to, just a level of accountability when you're working with each other. You know, as you said, sometimes you are just trying to survive. You're trying to survive the ND period, or you're trying to survive the end of practice. Maybe it's been a long one, and to the lab in the last 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes after practice. They don't have their helmets on. They don't have their shoulder pads on, but they're working with their buddies, and I think their buddies are going to hold them accountable. Their buddies are going to make them get better. And certainly if you're creating a culture with what you're hoping you're creating, one that is accountable to each other, this is their time. I've always looked at this 10-minute period as really, our guys don't know it, right? I don't specifically say it to them, but this is where I'm looking to see who's leading. I'm looking to see who's taking charge. And then all of a sudden, those leaders are revealing themselves. And then by the end of fall camp, know the guys I'm going to be counting on to really push our group in the locker room, push our group in between practices, in between reps. And from there, I coach those guys on how to do that. And I think it's really, like I said, the last 2 years, it's led to our guys really being a close unit together and really loving each other. And I'm excited to see what we're able to do this fall.
The other thing you mentioned to me before we got going was points of emphasis, and that you got to carry those throughout this season. It's not just something installed in camp or words in a PowerPoint, but making sure those things are constantly reinforced, brought to light, taught in maybe some new or unique ways. But things like ball security, things like physicality, those are things that are important. You got to make sure you work them into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just a firm believer that if you are trying to emphasize something, trying to promote something in your program, and you have to work on it. You know, historically here, we've really focused on things like tip of spear. You mentioned Scott Peters. We use tip of spear, right? That became the thing we adopted as a program, not just as an offensive line group. So between tip of spear and bending with fast feet and ball security, those are things that we emphasize as a football team. Well, then we had to work on them. So what we did is create really the last 5 minutes of practice. I would say this is now going on maybe 5 to 6 years. The last 5 minutes of our practice, we're going to work on what we call a pound to rock drill, which is, like I said, a tip of spear drill. And it's not just, like I mentioned, the O-line doing it. It's the DBs. It's the quarterbacks working some offhand violence. Bending with fast feet, we're doing drills to get our guys to move in space and be able to arrive with dynamic feet and great posture. Ball security is a point of emphasis. Well, O-line and D-line don't really carry the ball. For us, during that ball security drill, we're going to work on fumble recovery. We're going to work on properly securing the football. We're going to work on what it's like to be the second man to a scrum and protect your buddy as he's securing the football. And so we work on those things. We emphasize and we feel like they should show up beyond the PowerPoint, as you mentioned, or as a hashtag on social media or something of that nature. We're going to work on them. For us, we're trying to promote our guys to be masters of their craft. We're trying to get our guys to be urgent and really physicality, be a physical football team throughout the year. And so when you talk about physicality, I really try to make a point of emphasis to highlight that stuff when we see it. We're pointing out when guys are being physical. We're promoting physical football, and you can't miss those opportunities, whether it's in meetings or whether it's reviewing film with your guys. If you're promoting it, you got to point it out. You got to highlight it. And then you got to work on it as well at practice.
Definitely. Practice was always something I really loved. And I think as a coach, if you love it, your players will too. Or if it's drudgery to you, it's going to be drudgery to your players. So it's in your best interest to find ways to be great in practice. And I appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of these ideas with us here today. And best of luck to you and the Warhawks here rest of 2024.
Thanks, Keith. I really appreciate it.
I think the impactful takeaway from this episode on practice is about the meticulous planning and adaptation. And I think that's something you need to look at throughout the year. You always want to be getting better at practice. You want it to be productive throughout the season. You always have to look at what's serving us well right now. Maybe what can we emphasize more? What can we set aside for a little bit? How do you make the most out of the time that you have out there? As Coach pointed out, it's all about focusing on small details. And he pointed out examples like ball placement or camera angles or the transitions between periods, even who controls the whistle. So being meticulous about organizing those things can really maximize your efficiency and your effectiveness of practice, and it create an environment where your players are really fully engaged because the practices are crisp and well structured. So remember that as you continue to go on through the season. It's not about the copy and paste of what you've been doing from week to week. It's really thinking about what can we do to get better, even if that format of practice remains the same. Thank you again for supporting the Coach and Coordinator podcast. As you know, we want to support coaches at all levels by providing insight into the mindset and the skill set of the best coaches. We also want to share the best tools and technology that they use, and you can find those in our 10% toolkit. The link is in the show notes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.